The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, broadcasted across every communication channel Earth possessed. Ambassador Krelix of the Vaxthor Empire appeared on screens worldwide, his 6 eyes blinking in what humans had learned meant urgency. His blue-scaled skin shimmered under the lights of the Galactic Council chamber, a massive space station that orbited a dying star somewhere near the galaxy's core. "People of Earth," Krelix began, his translator making his voice sound almost human. "For 300 years, the Galactic Council has fought the Void Swarm. This enemy has consumed thousands of worlds. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They only hunger." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Your planet has been a member of our galactic community for 50 years now. The time has come for humanity to join the fight. We need your soldiers, your ships, your resources. The survival of the galaxy depends on every species doing their part." President Elena Vasquez sat in the Situation Room beneath the White House, surrounded by military advisors and world leaders connected via secure channels. She watched the ambassador's speech with cold eyes. Beside her, General Marcus Chen pointed at a separate monitor displaying intercepted communications between council members. "Ma'am, you need to see this," Chen said quietly. The messages were clear. The council species referred to humans as the Expendables. One message from a Vaxthor commander read, "Let the humans fill the front lines. They breed quickly and their technology is primitive. We lose nothing valuable if they fall." Another from the insectoid Zrixtal mentioned, "Their aggression makes them perfect cannon fodder. Point them at the enemy and let nature take its course." Elena's jaw tightened. She had suspected this, but seeing it confirmed made her blood boil. For 50 years, humanity had tried to find their place among the stars. They had traded, learned, and grown, but every step of the way the older species had looked down on them. Humanity was too young, too violent, too emotional, and now when war came knocking, suddenly Earth was valuable, as bullet sponges. She stood up, straightening her jacket. "Get me a line to the UN General Assembly, and someone bring me our defense reports for the Sol system." 6 hours later, every human on Earth and in the colonies watched as President Vasquez addressed the United Nations. Behind her, the flags of every nation stood in a semicircle, a reminder that this decision affected all of humanity. Citizens of Earth, colonists of Mars, Luna, and beyond, she began. "Today the Galactic Council asked us to join their war. They promised glory, honor, and a place in galactic history." She paused, her expression hardening. "What they didn't tell you is that they see us as disposable. They want our sons and daughters to die in the front lines while they command from safety. They want our resources while giving us nothing but contempt in return." She tapped her podium, and holographic displays showed the intercepted messages for all to see. Gasps and angry murmurs rippled through the assembly. "Humanity has faced impossible odds before," Elena continued. "We have survived ice ages, plagues, and our own worst instincts. We did not survive by being someone else's cannon fodder. Therefore, Earth's answer to the Galactic Council is simple. No." The word echoed in the chamber. "We will not join this war. We will defend our own system with every resource we have. But we will not die for species who see us as nothing more than convenient shields. Let the Council fight their own battles. Humanity stands alone." The vote was unanimous. Every nation, every colony, every human government agreed. Earth would not be the galaxy's expendable infantry. The response from the Galactic Council was immediate and furious. Ambassador Krelix appeared again, his skin now flushed a darker blue with anger. "This is unacceptable. The Void Swarm threatens all life in the galaxy. Refusing to fight is cowardice." Other species joined the condemnation. The Zrixtal Queen called humans selfish primitives. The Crystalline Lumina Collective declared humanity unworthy of galactic citizenship. Economic sanctions were threatened. Trade routes were closed. The message was clear: fall in line or be isolated. But Earth had prepared for this possibility. For years, human scientists and engineers had been quietly working on projects the Council knew nothing about. Fusion drives that didn't rely on Council technology. Weapons designed specifically for defending the Sol system. Automated factories that could sustain human colonies without outside trade. Admiral Chen presented the defense plans to a joint session of the world's military leaders. "We fortified every planet, every moon, every major asteroid. The outer system is a minefield. We have weapons platforms hidden in the Kuiper Belt. If anything hostile enters our space, they'll face hell itself. But can we really stand alone? asked General Morrison of the European Defense Force. Chen pulled up a star map showing the Void Swarm's position. The swarm is 200 light-years away, focused on Council space. As long as we stay neutral, we should be safe. They have no reason to come here. Elena, watching from her office, wanted to believe that, but she remembered something her grandfather used to say. When you refuse to run with the herd, predators notice you. She made a mental note to double the defense budget. In the depths of space, far beyond the galaxy's edge, the Void Swarm Collective processed information. A species had refused to flee. A species had chosen to stand apart. This anomaly required investigation. A single scout ship changed course, turning its sensors toward a small yellow star and the blue planet orbiting it. The swarm wanted to understand what made these humans different. They would soon find out. 3 months after Earth's refusal, the warning alarm screamed across every monitoring station in the Sol system. Something had just entered their space, moving faster than any known Council ship. Admiral Marcus Chen was pulled from a rare moment of sleep, rushing to the command center, still buttoning his uniform. Report, he barked as he entered the war room. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his daughter and the chief science officer, looked up from her console with fear in her eyes. Sir, we have an unknown contact. It just appeared at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Scanning now, but Admiral, this isn't Council technology. The energy signature matches nothing in our databases. On the main screen, the object appeared. It looked alive somehow. The ship, if it could be called that, was a twisted mass of dark metal and organic tissue, pulsing with sickly green light. It moved through space like a predator stalking prey, its sensors sweeping across the solar system with cold intelligence. Is it the Void Swarm? Asked General Morrison, his voice tight. Sarah nodded slowly. Analyzing the biological components. Yes, sir. This is a swarm scout ship, smaller than their main vessels, but the signature matches Council intelligence reports. Chen's mind raced. The swarm was supposed to be 200 light-years away, busy with the Council fleets. Why would they come here? Unless... He felt ice form in his stomach. They had come because Earth refused to run, because humanity had drawn attention to itself. Battle stations, he ordered. All defensive platforms online. I want eyes on that thing every second. The scout ship ignored the human vessels that scrambled to intercept it. It simply drifted through their space, scanning everything. Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, the hidden weapons platforms. Everything was being studied, analyzed, recorded. Then, without warning, it changed course. It headed straight for Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons where 400 colonists lived and worked in mining facilities. Sir, it's accelerating toward the Ganymede colony, Sarah shouted. Chen didn't hesitate. All ships, engage. Take it down now. 12 human warships opened fire. Railgun rounds, missiles, and laser weapons converged on the scout ship. But the creature was fast. It dodged, weaved, and absorbed hits that should have destroyed it. Then, almost lazily, it fired back. The beam that lanced from the scout ship was unlike anything humans had seen. It didn't just destroy the colony dome on Ganymede. It unmade it. Matter simply ceased to exist where the beam touched. 400 lives vanished in 3 seconds. No explosion, no fire, just nothing. Rage filled every human who witnessed it. The fleet attacked with everything they had. This time, they didn't try for precise shots. They surrounded the scout ship and unleashed hell itself. When the firing stopped, the scout was dead, drifting in pieces through the void. But instead of destroying it completely, Chen made a different call. Recovery teams, get that thing intact. I want every piece brought to the research station. We need to understand what we're fighting. For 2 weeks, human scientists tore the scout ship apart molecule by molecule. Dr. Sarah Kim led the research team, barely sleeping as she unraveled the swarm's secrets. What she found terrified and excited her in equal measure. They're not machines, she explained to the assembled military leaders. Not exactly. The swarm is a fusion of biology and technology, grown rather than built. Each ship is partially alive, connected to the collective through some kind of quantum network. She pulled up a hologram showing the scouts' neural structure. But here's the important part. They've never adapted to fighting a species that studies them first. Every other race just throws ships at the swarm until one side runs out. We're the first to cut one open and learn. Admiral Chen studied the data. Weaknesses? Several, Sarah said, her excitement growing. Their organic components are vulnerable to specific quantum frequencies. Their network connection can be disrupted. And most importantly, they're predictable. The swarm has used the same tactics for centuries because nothing has forced them to change. Before they could celebrate this discovery, every communication channel in human space lit up simultaneously. The message that came through was not in any known language, yet somehow every human understood it perfectly. The swarm spoke directly into their minds, cold and ancient and utterly alien. Species 12,047. You refused to flee with the herd. You destroyed our scout. We acknowledge your defiance. 3 harvester fleets now turn toward your star. You will understand why resistance is futile. You will understand why the others run. You will be taught the price of standing alone. The message ended as abruptly as it began. Across Earth, people felt a primal fear they couldn't explain. This wasn't just a threat. It was a promise from something older and more terrible than they had imagined. In the command center, alarms began screaming again. Sarah's console showed new contacts appearing at the edge of the system. 3 massive fleets, each containing hundreds of ships, all heading toward Earth at impossible speeds. Time to arrival? Chen asked, his voice steady despite the dread pooling in his gut. 92 days, sir. 3 months. Humanity had 3 months to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed thousands of worlds. Chen looked at the faces around him. Fear, determination, and something else. Anger. The swarm had made a mistake by killing those colonists. They had given humanity something more powerful than any weapon, a reason to fight with everything they had. Send a message to every government, every military installation, every factory on Earth and in the colonies, Chen ordered. The swarm wants to test us? Fine. Let's show them what happens when you test a species that refuses to quit. As humanity mobilized for war, the Void Swarm calculated victory with cold certainty. Their analysis showed this species was weak, young, technologically inferior. The 3 harvester fleets were more than sufficient to crush them. What the swarm didn't understand, what their ancient intelligence couldn't process, was that they had just challenged a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history as persistence predators. Humans didn't need to be stronger or faster. They just needed to refuse to stop fighting. The swarm was about to learn a hard lesson. The harvester fleets emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system exactly 92 days later, just as predicted. 3 massive armadas, each containing 300 ships of living metal and twisted biology, pulsing with that same sickly green light. They had destroyed 1,000 worlds. Earth would be the 1,001st. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Unity, humanity's flagship. Around him, the defense fleet waited. Every ship humanity could spare. Every weapon they had built in those desperate 3 months. It wasn't enough. Not even close, but it would have to be. All stations report ready, sir, Lieutenant Sarah Kim said from her console. His daughter's voice was steady, professional. She had grown up in these 3 months, aged by responsibility and the weight of what was coming. Signal the fleet, Chen ordered. Remember the plan. We make them bleed for every inch. The harvester fleets advanced, expecting humanity to scatter like every other species had done. They expected fear, chaos, retreat. Instead, they found something the swarm had never encountered before. A species that had spent 3 months preparing to hurt them. The outer minefield activated first. Nuclear weapons that had been floating dormant in the dark suddenly ignited, transforming the Kuiper Belt into a wall of atomic fire. The swarm's vanguard lost 30 ships in the first 10 seconds, disintegrating in nuclear fury. The swarm paused, recalculating. This was unexpected. Then the railgun platforms opened fire, hidden in asteroids throughout the outer system. Hundreds of magnetic accelerators launched tungsten rods at relativistic speeds. The kinetic kill weapons punched through swarm ships like bullets through paper, their shields useless against simple physics. Another 50 ships died before the swarm adapted, weaving between the projectiles with disturbing grace. But the swarm was learning, adjusting. They pushed forward, accepting losses, knowing their numbers would prevail. They reached Neptune's orbit and found submarine-style vessels emerging from beneath the ice of Triton. Humanity had weaponized every moon, every planet, every piece of rock in their system. The submarines fired fusion torpedoes, each one a miniature sun. The swarm lost more ships, but they kept coming. They're adapting to our tactics, Sarah reported, her fingers flying across her console. Each wave learns from the last. They're spreading out, making it harder to hit multiple targets. Chen nodded grimly. Phase 2. Release the Ravens. From hidden bays throughout the system, thousands of small fighter craft launched. Humans called them ravens, black, fast, and hungry. Unlike traditional fighters, these were designed for one thing: getting close enough to hurt the swarm. Each raven was basically a pilot strapped to an engine and a bomb. Suicide runs, but volunteers filled every cockpit. The ravens swarmed the harvester fleets like angry hornets. They dodged the swarm's weapons using tactics no automated system could match: human intuition, creativity, and that special kind of crazy that only a species from Earth possessed. They flew directly into the swarm's formation and detonated. Each explosion took down 2 or 3 swarm ships but also killed the pilot. Chen watched the numbers drop. His pilots, dying by the hundreds. But they were winning. Somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The swarm reached Mars orbit and found humanity's main fleet waiting. The battle turned into a brutal slugging match. Human ships died by the dozens, but they took the swarm with them. Admiral Chen led the charge, his flagship trading blows with a harvester command ship 3 times its size. The Unity's hull buckled under the assault, fire spreading through decks, but Chen refused to retreat. All power to forward weapons, he shouted over the alarms. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. The Unity fired everything it had. The harvester command ship tried to dodge, but Chen had anticipated it. The beams cut through the organic metal, finding the neural core Sarah had identified months ago. The harvester exploded in a cascade of green energy, taking the Unity with it. "Father!" Sarah screamed from Earth Command, watching her father's ship disintegrate. Tears streamed down her face, but she couldn't stop now. Couldn't break. She wiped her eyes and focused on her console. "All ships, the Admiral is gone. Continue the mission. Make them pay for every inch." The swarm, now down to half its original strength, pressed forward. They had paid a terrible price, but Earth was within reach. They would finish this, harvest the planet, and teach the galaxy what happened to species that refused to submit. But as they entered Earth's atmosphere, they made their fatal mistake. They deployed ground forces to break human morale. The swarm had done this countless times before, seeing their enemy up close, seeing the despair in their eyes before the harvest, always broke resistance. The swarm didn't understand what it meant to fight humans on human ground. The creatures that descended on New York, London, Tokyo, and Mumbai were nightmares made flesh, 10 feet tall, covered in armor-like scales, with claws that could tear through steel. They had terrorized 1,000 species. They expected humans to flee, to hide, to beg. Instead, they found Molotov cocktails thrown from apartment windows. They found hunting rifles fired by farmers who had never left their towns. They found soldiers fighting beside civilians, everyone armed with whatever they could carry. Every street became a war zone. Every building became a fortress. In New York, a grandmother named Rosa Martinez stood on her fire escape with a homemade explosive, waiting for the swarm creatures to reach her building. When they did, she didn't run. She pulled the pin, said a prayer, and jumped. The explosion took out 5 swarm warriors and sealed the street, buying time for others to escape. Stories like Rosa's happened thousands of times across the planet. The swarm had never faced this, a species where even the civilians fought back with terrifying determination, where grandmothers became warriors and children learned to make weapons from household items. But Earth was dying. Half the planet burned, billions huddled in underground shelters, listening to the sounds of war above. The swarm controlled the skies and was slowly grinding through humanity's defenses. In a bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, Dr. Sarah Kim worked frantically on the quantum disruptor network she had designed using the scout ship's technology. It was nearly ready, but she needed time measured in hours while people above died in minutes. She thought of her father, of his sacrifice. She thought of Rosa Martinez and millions like her. They had bought time with their lives. She couldn't waste it. "Come on," she whispered to the machine, her hands steady despite the exhaustion and grief. "Work. Please work." Above her, Earth's last defense fleet made their final stand, selling their lives second by second to give Sarah the time she needed. Dr. Sarah Kim's hands trembled as she made the final connection on the quantum disruptor network. Around her in the Geneva bunker, exhausted scientists and engineers watched in silence. Above them, the sounds of war had become almost constant. Explosions, the screech of swarm weapons, the desperate return fire from humanity's dwindling forces. Status? President Elena Vasquez's voice crackled through the communication system. She was in a bunker somewhere beneath Washington, D.C., still commanding what was left of humanity's resistance. Almost there, Madam President, Sarah replied, checking the readings for the 100th time. The network is online across all continents. We just need to activate it, but... She paused, her voice catching. There's no way to test it. Either it works and we win, or it fails and we're finished. Then we'd better hope your father trained you well, Elena said gently. She had watched Marcus Chen die on screen just like everyone else. His sacrifice had become the rallying cry that kept humanity fighting. Activate when ready, Doctor. That's an order. Sarah took a deep breath and thought about her father, about all the people dying above her, about the 400 colonists on Ganymede who had started this nightmare. Her finger hovered over the activation button. For Earth, she whispered and pressed it. Nothing seemed to happen at first. The bunker remained quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sounds of battle. Sarah's heart sank. Had she miscalculated? Had her father died for nothing? Then, across the globe, the swarm began to scream. It wasn't a sound humans could normally hear. It was a frequency that resonated through the quantum network the swarm used to coordinate their forces. The disruptor Sarah had built amplified a harmonic signal through that network, turning the swarm's greatest strength into their downfall. On the surface, swarm warriors suddenly seized up, their biological components fighting against their mechanical parts. Some literally tore themselves apart. Others simply collapsed, their neural systems overloaded with cascading feedback. The swarm ships in orbit began spinning out of control, their crews dead or dying at their stations. But Sarah's weapon did something else, something she hadn't predicted. The quantum signal didn't just affect the swarm in the Sol system, it traveled through their entire network, reaching across light years instantaneously. Every swarm cluster in the galaxy received Earth's signal, encoded in the quantum frequency like a message written in pain. The signal carried more than just weapon data. It carried everything the swarm had learned about humanity. The stubborn refusal to surrender. The civilians who fought with kitchen knives against impossible odds. The pilots who flew suicide missions with smiles on their faces. The admiral who rammed his flagship into a command ship to protect his homeworld. It carried the undeniable truth humans were not prey. In the Galactic Core, the Void Swarm Collective processed this information with something approaching fear. For millions of years, they had been the apex predator. Now they had found something worse. A young species that fought with such ferocity, such creativity, such absolute refusal to quit, that even the swarm recognized the threat. The decision was unanimous across the collective. Withdraw. Avoid human space at all costs. The 3 harvester fleets had been eliminated. The price to try again was too high. Humanity was too dangerous to harvest. On Earth, the swarm's retreat was immediate and total. Ships that could still fly jumped to hyperspace, abandoning their ground forces. The creatures left behind fought on mindlessly for a few more hours before the disruptor signal finally killed them all. By dawn, the sky was clear of enemy vessels for the first time in a week. Sarah emerged from the bunker into a world transformed by war. Geneva was unrecognizable. Buildings reduced to rubble, streets cratered by weapons fire, smoke rising from 1,000 fires. But survivors were emerging from shelters, looking up at the clear sky with disbelief and hope. President Vasquez addressed the world from the ruins of the White House, standing in what used to be the Rose Garden. Behind her, Washington, D.C. burned, but the American flag still flew from a makeshift pole. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice hoarse with exhaustion and grief. "The swarm has retreated. We have won." She paused, letting the words sink in. But the price? The price was everything. The numbers scrolled across screens worldwide. 2.3 billion dead. Entire cities gone. Tokyo, Mumbai, São Paulo, Lagos erased from the map. 50 years of space colonies reduced to debris. Earth's surface scarred by weapons that would take centuries to heal. We paid for our defiance with the lives of our children, our parents, our friends. Elena continued, tears streaming down her face. But we paid on our terms. We bowed to no one. We proved that humanity cannot be broken, cannot be made to submit, cannot be harvested like cattle. Her voice grew stronger. We stood alone and we survived. Let the galaxy remember that. The broadcast was picked up across the galaxy. Every species in the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. The Void Swarm, the terror that had required 847 species to barely hold at bay, had been defeated by humanity alone, outnumbered. and with technology the Council had dismissed as primitive. Ambassador Krelix of the Vaxthor Empire watched from the Council chambers, his 6 eyes wide with a mixture of awe and shame. Around him, other Council members sat in shocked silence. The humans had done what the entire galaxy couldn't do. They had made the swarm retreat. But then the sensors detected something new. The swarm was moving again, but not toward Council space. They were repositioning, gathering forces, preparing for something the galaxy had never seen. The swarm had changed tactics. They were no longer harvesting worlds slowly. They were preparing for total extermination of all intelligent life. "They're going to kill us all," whispered the Zrixtal Queen, her compound eyes reflecting genuine terror. "We humiliated them. Now they'll destroy everything rather than risk another defeat." Krelix stood slowly, his body heavy with the weight of what must come next. "Then we have one choice," he said quietly. "We must ask the humans to save us all." The irony was not lost on anyone in the chamber. The species they had tried to use as cannon fodder, the primitive humans they had dismissed and insulted, were now the galaxy's only hope. Ambassador Krelix stood in the ruins of what had been the United Nations building in New York. The glass towers were gone, replaced by twisted metal and concrete. The famous hall where nations had once debated was now open to the sky, its roof torn away by swarm weapons. This was where President Elena Vasquez had chosen to meet the Galactic Council delegation. The symbolism was not subtle. Elena sat in a simple folding chair among the rubble, wearing clothes stained with dust and soot. She had been helping dig survivors from collapsed buildings when the Council's request came. She hadn't bothered to clean up. Let them see what their dismissal had cost. "Madam President," Krelix began, his translator struggling to convey the emotion in his voice. "We come to ask, to beg," Elena interrupted coldly. "Let's be honest, Ambassador. You're here to beg." Krelix's scales flushed dark blue with shame. "Yes, we come to beg for humanity's help. The swarm has changed tactics. They're no longer harvesting worlds, they're preparing to sterilize the galaxy. Every world with intelligent life will be destroyed. We estimate we have 1 year before they're ready to begin. And you want what? Our weapon?" Elena stood walking to the edge of the destroyed building. From here she could see the mass graves being dug in Central Park. "You want the quantum disruptor that cost us 2 billion lives to develop? We want more than that," Krelix said quietly. "We need you to lead the defense. The Council's strategies have failed for 3 centuries. Your tactics defeated the swarm in a week. We need human commanders, human strategies, human soldiers." Elena laughed, a harsh sound that made the Council delegation flinch. "You called us primitive, expendable, cannon fodder. You were ready to sacrifice our entire species to save yourselves. And now you want us to save you?" "Yes," Krelix said simply. His honesty was startling. "We were wrong. About everything. We underestimated you, dismissed you, and when you refused to be used, we abandoned you to face the swarm alone. We have no right to ask anything of humanity, but the alternative is extinction for every species in the galaxy, including yours." Elena turned to face him fully. "Then you'll accept our terms, non-negotiable. Name them." "First, humanity commands the war effort. Every fleet, every species, every resource under human control. No debates, no Council oversight. We fight this war our way." She held up a second finger. "Second, every species contributes equally. No more valuable races held in reserve while others die on the front lines. Everyone fights, everyone bleeds, everyone risks the same." Krelix nodded slowly. "Agreed. Third, Earth's quantum weapons technology remains under human control. We'll deploy it, we'll teach species how to use it, but the core research stays with us. We won't give you the tools to make us irrelevant again." "Agreed. Fourth, the Galactic Council is dissolved after the war, reformed with equal representation, equal voting rights, and no species gets special privileges based on age or technology level." This caused murmurs among the delegation, but Krelix raised a hand for silence. "Agreed. And finally," Elena's voice went cold as ice, "reparations. Full reparations for every world the Council abandoned to save themselves. Every species you left to die while you fortified your core worlds. You'll pay to rebuild them all, including Earth." "The cost would bankrupt half the Council species," protested the Lumina Collective representative. Elena's smile was sharp as a knife. "Then you'll learn what it means to sacrifice for survival, won't you? My terms are final. Accept them all or face the swarm alone." The delegation conferred in hushed tones. Finally, Krellick stepped forward. Humanity's terms are accepted. All of them. We place the fate of the galaxy in your hands, President Vasquez. Elena nodded slowly. Then we'll help. Not because we forgive you, not because we've forgotten what you tried to do to us, but because, unlike you, we don't determine a species' worth by their usefulness to us. We fight for what's right, not what's convenient. 6 months later, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled in Earth orbit. 10,000 ships from 847 species, all bearing the mark of human command. A simple blue circle on white, representing Earth as seen from space. At the fleet's center was the ESS Defiance, humanity's new flagship commanded by Admiral Sarah Kim. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at the fleet around her. Humans crewed only a fraction of the ships, but every vessel followed human tactics, human strategies, human determination. She thought of her father, of how proud he would be to see this. Admiral, her communications officer called out. All ships report ready. Awaiting your orders. Sarah took a deep breath. The plan was audacious, maybe insane. Instead of defending council space, humanity had convinced the galaxy to do something no one had attempted in the swarm's million-year history. Take the war to their home galaxy. Strike at the collective itself and the threat at its source. Signal all ships, Sarah ordered. Prepare for hyperspace jump to the Void Galaxy. As the fleet powered up its drives, Sarah recorded a final message. It wasn't for the Council or for Earth. It was for the Swarm Collective. Broadcast on every frequency they monitored. Void Swarm Collective, this is Admiral Sarah Kim of the human fleet. You came to our world to teach us a lesson, to show us why we should have run with the herd. You wanted to demonstrate your power, your inevitability. She paused, her voice hard as steel. You succeeded. You taught us exactly what you are, a bully that's never been hit back hard enough to remember the pain. She stood straighter, channeling her father's confidence. You tested us. You killed our people. You made the fatal mistake of making humanity angry. And now you're going to learn what we really are. We're not prey. We're not frightened colonists or desperate refugees. We're persistence predators from a world that tried to kill us for millions of years. And we won. The fleet began entering hyperspace, one ship at a time, disappearing into the void between galaxies. You wanted to know what happens when you challenge humanity? Now you'll find out. We're coming to your home. We're bringing friends, and we're going to end this war the human way by making sure you can never threaten anyone again. Her smile was fierce. See you soon. And Swarm, run. For the first time in your existence, you're the prey. The Defiance vanished into hyperspace, followed by 10,000 ships carrying the combined might of the galaxy. Humanity had gone to war not for territory or resources or glory, but to ensure that bullies everywhere learned one simple lesson. Some species don't stay down when you hit them. Some species hit back harder. Earth had refused to join the war when it was someone else's fight, but now humanity was ending the war on their own terms. The Void Swarm had challenged the wrong species. They had tested the one race in the galaxy that refused to quit, refused to submit, refused to accept defeat. They had tested humans, and now they would learn why the galaxy should have listened when Earth said no. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 300 years, hope burned bright across the galaxy, because humanity had shown them all something they had forgotten. Sometimes the newest voice in the room is the one worth listening to, and sometimes the species everyone underestimates is exactly the one that changes everything.